Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of To the Moon, Allison. We're talking live. Kira's already applauding. I love it.
I'm happy.
You're happy. I'm happy too, because we're here to talk about the top and trending books in science fiction, fantasy, literary fiction, and romance. I'm your host, Allison Martine Hubbard, contemporary romance author of the Bourbon books and works of literary science fiction. And as you can see, I am joined today by the amazing Jane Buxton. Hello, Kira.
Hello.
And she is here to talk about her new release, Feral Creatures, which came out last week.
Yes, Tuesday. Tuesday.
We are so excited, but this is not your first Crodeo. Okay, I will not do this whole episode. I promise. That was my one bad crow pun. I wanted to get it in early so people could hang up now and go, she's going to be doing crow puns the entire time. But to be fair, you started it because this book starts with a prologue. And this is your protagonist.
Yes,
and if that's not for you, then maybe this isn't the book for you. But this is the book for me. I feel like this one was written specifically for me. And I wanted to introduce you as a fantasy author. I don't even know if that's right, though, because the genre for this, Roman, our producer, was asking us before the show, what genre is this? And I said, heck if I know, because it's listed as fantasy, animal fiction, satire. Yep. Is animal fiction a genre?
I don't know. I think it's great if it was. I don't see it in the bookstores. You know,
I would want to say, do you remember the what is it? The Graham something novels, that the Graham base Animalia stuff. I want to call it Animalia because that sounds much fancier than just animal fiction, because that sounds like it's for 5-year-olds. This is not for 5-year-olds. So, Kira, without further ado, can you please tell us a little bit about this wonderful book?
Yes, I would be delighted. Thank you for that lovely intro, Allison. And also, huge congrats to the Moon, Allison. This being the first one, and I'm so honored.
You're launched,
and you know I'm so excited to be the first guest. It's only going to go uphill from here. Yes, my book, Feral Creatures. I'm so excited that it's out.
It is beautiful.
Yes, the cover is just. I mean, I'm pretty sure it can be seen in outer space. Really very bright and stunning. But it is the sequel to Hollow Kingdom, my first novel. It's also standalone, so you don't have to have read Hollow Kingdom because of, for example, the prologue will key you in. But it is the story of St, who is a crow. Am I allowed to say his name?
Please tell us his actual name.
His real name is Shit Turd. And this is he goes by St normally, but this is a name given to him by the man who raised him, who is called Big Jim, who's a kind of like crass and bawdy good old boy. And
who thinks Walmart is fancy?
He thinks Walmart is fancy. He does. This is true.
There's Big Jim for you in a nutshell.
Yeah, exactly. And it's sort of you know, it's interesting because it has this bird's eye view of humanity, because he is the protagonist, St, and his filter is through this man, Big Jim, right? Yeah. And I don't want to go into too many spoilers, but This is basically a continuation of his big adventures as St is trying to figure out, sort of what's happened to humanity, and he ends up he finds this great treasure that he must protect, and this is the story. This is a terrible description of the novel.
I love it, and there's so many things I want to get into, so I'm going to stop you there and kind of pull back a few of the things, and I'll jump into by confessing I'm a huge failure. I didn't read Hollow Kingdom because I didn't even know that you existed until I was asked, hey, would you like to have Jane Buxton on your show? And I saw this cover and said, gimme. And I knew that at that point it was going to be a sequel to a book I hadn't read. And normally you will not get me doing that because I hate not knowing what's going on. And usually authors do a piss poor job of explaining anything that's happening. But your prologue was fabulous. And I did feel like there were times when, okay, I still want to know more about it. And there were certain things that St was saying where I'm going, he's a crow. Is he actually accurate here, or is he distorting things? Like one of my favorite St bits of wisdom is explaining about the first people on the moon, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Lightyear. So, he's not exactly a reliable protagonist or narrator with his bird's eye view. But I did feel like I was completely caught up to the point where I could jump into the action and jump into the narrative. And I wasn't left going, well, I just don't even understand what's happening here. I definitely, though, want to go back and read the first one. So well done, because I feel like anyone who finds this one doesn't realize they should have read the first one. Just read it, and then you can go back and read the other adventures later. And I also appreciate that you just said treasure.
Yes.
So I won't say anything further about what that treasure is or the journey that treasure takes little ST here on. So I will leave it at that. But I appreciated the treasure and how you handled all of that treasure hunting, as it was.
I have talked about it. So if you want to go there, we can totally go there. But I'm trying to be respectful and feel it out, and see what everybody's willing to.
Well, and I'm willing to talk about it. I will just say that I wasn't sure when the last book left how much of that would already be revealed. So I wouldn't want to spoil it for any readers who finished Hollow Kingdom and then are like, oh wait, I didn't know about that. I didn't want to give away any of the surprises that you have in store. And there's so many. And one of the things that I just wanted to say is your footnotes are literally my favorite part. When I was thinking of, and I know that sounds like a slam, like, why is a footnote your favorite part? That is terrible. But anyone who knows me knows one of my favorite authors of all time, may he rest in peace, Sir Terry Pratchett. And that man could work a hilarious footnote into the narrative. And you just don't see that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you took a card from the Discworld repertoire or if that's even your thing, but
it is my thing. I'm so that's so flattering to have you mention his name, while I'm here with you. It's amazing. Like, that's just like, oh, I love Terry Pratchett. I don't, what it was partly in writing a sequel. It was like, okay, there's so much to catch everybody up on, hence the prologue. But also, the footnotes were a great way to kind of put in these little notes of, there's so much animal biology. There's these little animal facts here and there, which also tie beautifully into humor. Like, there's so much in the animal world that's fascinating and also very, very funny.
Yes.
So it was a wonderful way for me to have ST sort of carry on this, narrative, but then suddenly go waka 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 in the footnotes,
Exactly. Well, and we were talking earlier about some of the pets in our lives and some of them that are no longer with us. Before the show started, our audience here did not get to meet your cat Mushu, which I shared the name with my beloved, now long deceased guinea pig, Mushu, short for Mushu Pork. And I was thinking of him recently because one of the little footnotes has explaining what a hyrax is, and not everybody knows what a hyrax is, and ST refers to them as like inflated guinea pigs. I
think he says something
pretty accurate. Yeah, that's about right.
Animatronic inflated guinea pig. Yeah.
Yes, and yet they're the closest relative to an elephant, because that makes sense to nobody at all.
No, and there's so much. I mean, a beautiful thing about writing these books was it's a wonderful way for me to kind of nerd out and like do all this animal research and discover awesome things. Like, did you know that koala fingerprints?
Not bears, yeah.
Not bears. No.
Koalas. Yeah.
Koala fingerprints are almost indistinguishable from human fingerprints. So there's been confusion at crime scenes.
Those koala criminals. First off, they're in Australia, so you should have figured. I mean, that whole place is full of criminals, including the animals.
I know. To be that cute and to be around the huntsman spider, I mean, they have to have an edge, right? They have to.
They have to. But to be fair, there's nothing in Australia that doesn't look like someone just made it up. I mean, I'm still not really sure. The quokkas, if you've seen quokkas, I'm still not sure if they're not just putting us on and there is no such thing as quokka. And they're just puppets, and people are like, yeah, Americans think this is an animal. It's a stuffed animal. But they're adorable. I love them.
Yeah. But there's this thing about kangaroo farts I'm reading about more methane, or there's some question about their farts are more environmentally friendly than other farts. Like, it's just so
much. Who studies this stuff though? Like,
me, I'm the idiot.
You're the one who looks into it afterwards, but you aren't the one out there like with a methane spectrum determining the actual level of parts per million of methane in a kangaroo's flatulence, because that takes a really special kind of person. Now, going down the rabbit hole to check it out, I'm right there with you. So I love the idea of just shoving in these animal facts, but they're not just shoved in willy-nilly. They're woven into the narrative. And while we do have our protagonist, there are these beautiful interstitial chapters from other points of view and other animals. And here's the chance, I will admit, I didn't get a chance to read all this with my eyeballs. I'm an ear listener usually. So I read some of it and then I would listen to a chapter. And then if I had a chance to read with my eyes, I would. The narrator who did your book, so for anybody who's out there is going, I can't actually read with my eyes, I don't have time, get the audio. It is fantabulous. The narrator did an amazing job, both as ST and all the other creatures, including some really crazy accents. I think my favorite was there's a certain, I want to say he's a cameo character, so I don't want to say who he is because he was featured in the earlier book. And when he comes on and gives his perspective, I just couldn't stop laughing. I had to actually stop the audio to calm down enough to listen to what he was saying because it was that ridiculous. And I don't remember the last time I just continuously laughed through a book so much. And yet then there would be times I was crying. I don't usually get the kind of emotional whiplash between such extreme humor because usually if I'm reading something that's kind of funny, it's fluff, it's fun, I needed a break. But you kind of take us through the whole spectrum. Was that an intentional decision on your part or can you just not help it?
There's a lot of things I can't help. Well, to speak very quickly about Robert Petkoff, who does the audiobook, he already has legions of fans because he is, he's a prolific actor. He does the audiobooks for like Stephen King and David Foster Wallace. Nice. And this is how versatile he is. And then he does my, multi-animal, narration, but he just nails it. And so I absolutely cannot recommend his reading and all his readings enough. And just follow that man because he's a brilliant being and now a friend of mine, which is like, I pinch myself. He's so cool.
That is awesome.
And in terms of the, in terms of like the comedy and balancing also the more emotionally, really the whole point of the book, it really is an environmental parable. So my goal really was to have people be able to sort of connect more with the natural world and have us remember that, we're part of this glorious biodiverse, planet. Yes.
A web. I'm in the web here.
Exactly. We're inextricably connected. And, so there's so much causality. Everything we do affects the animals around us. And so, in voicing these animals, I wanted to make them as realistic as possible. I did my research. I've spent a lifetime around animals. My first job was at I was a volunteer when I was 12 at a zoo in Indonesia. And I used to run. Oh yeah. My job was supposed to be picking they would give me a tub of mealworms and I had to pick the beetles out that had, graduated. And those worms
graduated?
Yeah, well, had I mean, not like graduated with like
little caps. Exactly. Focus circumstomp on the bugs. Okay, move on.
I mean, who knows? Maybe that really does happen.
It could. I don't know what the job was. So were you going to take the mealworms to feed them to something else?
Yes. They would go to the baby animals in the nursery. So they would go to the baby primates and various animals in the nursery. And so, but I was 12 and I was precocious. So I would run off and I ended up befriending keepers. And I had all these amazing experiences from hand feeding the Sumatran rhino. I mean, there's so few of them left,
and you were one of the few people who got to not just like touch it, you got to feed. That's amazing. Every 12-year-old out there right now is jealous that you got to do that. I'm not 12.
And that. Like, I don't do that now. Yeah. I'm jealous of myself at age 12. It's crazy. One of my favorite things I ever did. I mean, I used to like scrub the hippo tongue with a broom and feed them whole their tongue. And I used to feed them whole watermelons and whole corn. You throw it in.
Wait, it was an uncut watermelon?
Yes. So you'd say buka, which means open in Indonesian, and they'd open the mouth like this, and then you'd lob in a bunch of vegetables, and then they'd close the mouth, and it would just be like a spray of vegetable juice, all over you, which is, I think, very cleansing for the skin, I would imagine. But joyful. I mean, I used to do these things. My favorite thing I ever got to do was to hold a cobra. And that was, I mean, I was often, I love snakes. I don't know if you can see my little snake bracelet.
No, show us your snake.
There you go.
Hello.
Snake bracelet. So to hold the cobra was like this it took a lot of trust you know, for the keeper. I mean, I was very young, and nobody
probably
knew
didn't recognize the risk involved quite as well as you probably do now.
I knew exactly what I was already at 12. I already was very aware about all the different snakes and, what they were. And
because you hear about people, you can hold a boa, you can hold that, but a cobra, they don't usually just hand those out. No, there's reasons.
And I had to like really prove myself. I spent a lot of time with the snake keepers, and they could see that eventually. It took me a while to prove. Anyway, I digress. The point was,
that's all good. I was going to ask if snake charmer is on your resume now, because I think it should be.
It should be. I wish.
I'm not
I'd like to be. Yeah, I love them. But this whole sort of lifetime of being around animals, and then, loving them so much, wanting to protect them and learn about them, it all comes together in this series. I think it all comes together in these books, where I'm able to sort of, really try my best in an effort to, I want there to be reverence for them, because I think in telling stories about these creatures, what we sort of, how we see them as humans really makes a difference to whether we fight for their survival. For example,
that's so true.
Yeah, right. I mean, like, I was reading this book, The Tiger by John Valen, and he really, I really understood it. He really elucidated that for me, because he said, for example, the tiger, when it was seen as vermin, then it's persecuted. And that's our story about it. Like, this is vermin. This is a creature that's killing off our cattle. We will attack it. Then suddenly it's a trophy animal. So it's, it's being hunted as a trophy animal. But if it's changed, and we have the story about the tiger is it's a celebrated icon, we can be moved collectively to protect it. So, that's why I think I wanted to write from the perspective of a snarky crow, because, they're really it's such an interesting, fascinating bird, and the corvids are fascinating. And I have not answered your question, which was, how did I balance the humor and the sadness?
But I think you just did, though, because you're talking about how these things and these animals that we've either treated as rubbish or treated as something to just dispose of and use as a resource that we'll have forever if we want.
Yeah.
And that just, again, this is the part where it would break my heart when we'd get to these things. And you brought up something very interesting as far as how we see these animals. The flip side is, you had throughout your book the words that the animals use to describe us. And I know it's kind of funny. I'm not sure. I hope it's not a spoiler to say that that the crow refers to humanity as mofos, but I'm pretty sure that came from Big Jim originally, that he calls us all mofos. So the mofo kingdom as it is, but then nobody else is really calling them mofos. It's things like the Skinners and all these words that are always sounding, and what?
The hollows.
None of the terms used for humanity are flattering or endearing. And that just forces us to really look at ourselves and our relationship to everything around us, and how we have this relationship with individual creatures, but also the species of creatures, and then even ecosystems of creatures. And you hit on all of that just beautifully. So I don't think I've ever read anything else that would even come close in terms of something like environmental fiction. I don't know if your book is considered something like that, because I know I've seen it referred to, it's The Walking Dead meets fantasy. And I don't know if that's completely accurate or inaccurate either. I just would say there's not a good series or comp that I can think of that comes close, because there are elements of satire, but it's also very clearly a post-apocalyptic, that's the word. Post-apocalyptic wasteland.
Yeah.
And yet the animals, they're still thriving, they're still adapting, they're still having to go on with their lives. Just because the world ends doesn't mean it ends for the creatures.
That's right. Yes, and I appreciate you saying that so much, because yes, there is often the Walking Dead comparison happens, and I'm quite happy with that, because it's fun and it alludes to the fact that it's
pop culture.
Absolutely.
And anything that people go, I like Walking Dead, I'll pick it up. So take the compliment as far as, hey, you're being compared to something awesome. But then talk to the fact that maybe that's not exactly what people are thinking.
And it's not the impetus for the novel. I didn't set out to, write an apocalypse or a zombie fiction.
Mm-hmm.
I would never, and I'm very clear about that when I talk to people who are huge zombie fans, because they, it might be a little bit not what they're thinking it is. But I think that's the fun also of zombie fiction, is it's always social critique. It's always steeped in social commentary. So for me, I sort of explore the horror elements of it, is that, humanity is nature's literal horror in the book. And that's why these creatures, I see it in my everyday life. I'm very lucky to have a relationship with the birds in my area. So I have 2 crows I spend time with every day. I've got jays. I've got all kinds of birds, and they know who I am, and they recognize me, and they follow me on my walks. And I would go further than that. I would tell you they actually know where I am in the house, and will follow me. It's amazing. They're very, very intelligent, and
Do they bring you things or take things from you?
Both. Yes, both. They used to bring me more gifts, and now I think they've realized I'm a bit of a pushover and they don't have to work so hard. But
she likes us.
Yeah, they're like, we're family, it's cool. T recently, she's the crow that St, the fictional crow, is based upon, and she's hilarious. She's just tremendous fun. She's so smart, and she's so silly, and she's like clumsy. And for a while, she was into like jump scares. She would hide. She would like call for me. I'd come outside, and then she'd hide, and then like come out of nowhere and scare the crap out of me. She's just a lot of fun. And
the jump scare, I just have to jump in here. You had one line that I actually had to pause and think about for a second, because there is an animal that makes a reference to a cucumber, and it made me just go, oh, the videos. Because if anybody's been on YouTube, they've seen Cats Afraid of Cucumbers. Yes. And you've got a cat who's like, and the cucumber. And I just laughed so hard because, why are cats afraid of cucumbers? Nobody knows. That makes
Nobody
no sense.
knows anything about cats. Like, we know about cats, and we don't know anything. They're just hilariously bizarre, and they're basically, I think there are overlords. Interesting. I'm really interested in our relationships with them, and
Well, you may have heard there were studies done that because of the shutdown and everything related to COVID, all the dogs were happy that their humans were home, and all the cats were pissed that we were here all the time in their personal space. Like, could you go away? We don't want you here anymore. Go do your thing, and then bring me food and let me just be for the rest of the time.
I know, right?
Sorry, cats. Like, there's a virus. Sorry.
Still here. Why are you here still? I know. It just it gets me up. It's great.
But even to the virus and our relationship with animals, you may have seen the picture that I took. I have a pass with our family to our local zoo, which is one of the older zoos, and it still has some of the smaller enclosures, which breaks my heart. But it's the Santa Ana Zoo locally. But they had to put up the plexiglass to make sure that we don't breathe on any of the monkeys there, because it's the zoo of 50 monkeys. Wow. And I know that down at the San Diego Zoo, gorillas were getting COVID from humans. And it's just, okay, well, if we didn't think we were closely related before, we could. And I had to explain to my children, we can pass on diseases to any kind of animal that's closely enough related to us. The virus gets that too. And guess what? All these other apes and the monkeys are all really closely related to us, and we can get them sick, and the last thing we want is for an animal that's already endangered to get sick because we didn't wear our masks. So.
It's not just the great apes, or it's also the tigers. I was just at an event.
Tigers too?
Yes, tigers, bears. We were at tigers were actually the first of the exotic animals to contract COVID. So people who are working with tigers are having to be extremely cautious. I was just at this event, private event at a zoo, and it was so different from the last time we'd been there, because all the keepers are wearing gloves. There's we were able to get a lot closer the time before. And I'll just tell you this can I tell you a random tiger?
Yes.
Okay. So this tiger, we're back in this, like, where we were is like sort of the backstage area where the keepers are doing training with them so that they're able to administer medications, and, and a really good relationship these people have with these tigers. And there's 4 of them in this enclosure, and they're on these platforms, hot day, and we're all watching. And they're all lolling around, cats in the sun, that whole thing, all been washed with some water. So everybody's cool and calm. And I'm looking in this enclosure, just enjoying these relaxing tigers. And all of a sudden, this tiny baby bunny pops up out of nowhere. It went under the fence and pops up in a tiger enclosure.
That's not a good place for a bunny.
No, and I want to say it's so crazy because we're in Washington State, right? Where, tigers are not indigenous. This bunny would probably never have thought this would happen to him. So this bunny, and it looks like something out of a Pixar movie. This bunny pops up and is like, hi. And then, and this bunny, there's this amazing moment where the bunny's like, ah, and then kind of looks around and is like, oh, sees the first tiger, and then you see the bunny sort of realize there's 4 of these monsters, like, oh.
So the bunny just,
yeah. so the bunny's like, oh my God. And then I watched the bunny and I was like, oh my God, what is going to happen? The bunny froze totally still. And then the bunny made the decision to bolt. And I don't know if you've seen how fast a bolting rabbit can go, but this rabbit shot across the enclosure, and I have never seen anything like it. And I got to see it up close. 4 adult tigers on platforms went from pretty much comatose to bolting after this bunny. I didn't even see the reaction. Like, that's how quick the cats are. Just like all 4 of them poof, after this bunny. And the little bugger made it. He went under the fence and off he went into his, like, have a life. And the tigers were all riled up and they're all pacing like.
Well, that bunny is going to have a really amazing story of the time he escaped 4 tigers just barely with his life.
And in the warren, like, one time.
Yeah, well, and we do get bunnies down here because we live in areas that have a lot of scrub and stuff like that. But I mean, I'd be coming out of an office building and then there'd just be like a bunny walking around. I'd be like, how did you get here? There's like the 405 here, and the bunny's just like, whatever. So I'm sure it's used to popping up in office buildings where people are looking at going, oh, you're cute. Here, have some Starbucks. Not a whole thing of just tigers, because that's just probably not what it was hoping for.
It sounds like your bunny like hailed an Uber, it was just like
probably. And it's like, hold on, I'm gonna go get my nails done. Excuse me. Orange County bunnies. What are you gonna do? Just nothing. And so some comments have come in. I've missed a lot of them. People, everything from Terry Shepard loving your cover. It helps if I hold it right side up. And Laurie Schoenfeld was saying she would like to have an environmentally friendly fart. And that would be really helpful, I'm sure, for all of us. I'm sure most of us probably don't have the same methane level of, say, a dairy farm, but if you're going
to support a fart, it should be an environmentally friendly one.
Yeah. It is. I'm sure that's very helpful for a lot of people. But so I did want to ask a question about, so since this was a sequel to your first book, did you have to make a lot of changes after the first one came out, or when you worked with your editor or anything, were they just like, just keep going? Or did they say, okay, based on how this one went, we'd like you to adjust?
No. So I'm incredibly lucky. My team are really supportive of me as an artist and kind of, you go for it. And they encourage me to really, push the boundaries of my imagination, because that's really like Hollow Kingdom, the first book. That was a book I didn't think would get published.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Now, I would guess you would have a hard time doing comps, because as we started the show saying, I don't know what it is, I'm sure you probably were incurring it going, your guess is as good as mine when it comes to genre. And I've been there, because the books that I have that are out and floating into the please publish me world they've been called like 5 different things, and people ask, what do you write? And I go, whatever it is they tell me it is fine with me, because is it speculative fiction? I could say this is satire, speculative fiction, horror, fantasy, dystopia. Just pick a label, pick all the labels, just stick them on.
Yeah. And I also want to absolve, anyone who feels that that's to their detriment, that they don't fit neatly in a category, or they don't fit into a genre, because I don't. And I think it's a glorious thing. And I don't think it's your responsibility as a writer to write something that neatly fits into anything. You've got to write what lights your soul on fire. And if that's 25 different genres, fly, honey, fly, like, I just don't feel like you need to box yourself in.
Well, and you hope that, but you also will get people, where you get rejection saying, well, it's not right for our list because we're more this, and this straddles this line, or it's to this, or it's to that. And sometimes that might just be a way of saying, we don't like it enough to take the risk. And that's totally fine, too.
I got that with my book as well. There were people who said, I'm allergic to animal narrators. Okay, that's wonderful. Then you
first off, take your Claritin and you'll be fine, okay? This doesn't have a lot of dander.
I needed you.
Well, and I guess I've read enough books that feel so cookie cutter, and it's not that they're not well written or hadn't really done what they're expected to do really, really well, but I'm tired of those. I want to keep seeing new. I want to keep seeing the books that push the boundaries. And I mean, I'm always in favor of throwing genre tropes just right out the window and exploring something new. And that's what your books do. So I'm glad that someone said, you know what, we're fine that it has an animal narrator, and we're fine that it probably doesn't fit neatly anywhere. And
a lot of people did. I want to say that a lot of people did. I was very lucky. And I think, I just think there's so many opportunities for books now, more than ever. There's more readers than ever. And so if you write something that is, you know, perfectly classically genre fiction, and it's, you know, you're writing authentically to yourself, fantastic. But if you write something weird, if you believe in it and you love it, then chances are there's somebody else that does too. And you'll find your people, and you'll find the people that support you, even if you're a little weird, you know.
Honestly, if you're a little weird, you're probably going to get more people who support you, because the weird people, we kind of find each other, and we recognize something going, yeah, you're my people, and this book speaks to me. Whereas some of the books that, yeah, you know, they're really well written and they're a good read. We can sometimes joke they're the airport reads, because they're the ones always on stock at the airport bookshop. And you're like, I forgot, my Kindle's not downloading. Let me just grab something else. And those are great. And they're making some good money doing all that. So my hat's off to them. But I always will have that like special place in my heart for the books that are just too weird, don't really make sense anywhere else. And when you try to tell other people about them, because I'm kind of like a book evangelist going, have you heard about feral creatures? Then people, you ask them, well, what's it about? And you're like, well, so there's a crow, and so he eats Cheetos, and that's kind of his thing. So I have the Cheetos here. I'm not gonna eat them, but I'm gonna give one to my crow. Have one. That's fine for him. But that's the kind of thing that some people are gonna go, oh my God, you need to just give me the book right now. Can I have the copy when you're done with it? Or I'm just gonna download it. That's fine. And other people are gonna be like, crow. Huh? And that's fine too. So I think to each their own, but I definitely have a space for the weirder, the ones that don't really make a whole lot of sense. We like to joke about the end cap authors, because they're the ones who don't fit nicely in any of the displays. So they just get their own. So that's always nice. You're like, I get my own table. I'll take that. That's good. Give me some extra special attention. Yeah. So I wanted to ask, is there going to be a third book?
Yes, I believe. Yes, I mean, I say that I believe there is. Like, it's like, I think someone will write it.
I hope so. It could be me. I was typing it. I don't know.
There is. It's in the works. I started and was enjoying myself tremendously, and then a real pandemic happened. Yeah. And when I was writing that, I sort of struggled. I was actually struggling to write at all, and I was struggling to read as well. I was very distracted and stressed out, and so I actually,
you're not alone in that.
No, exactly. And it's interesting because I've had chats with different artists who've either found that they were really creatively stoked and really dove into some project, and then there are ones like me who are like, and so I took a little bit of time to write another book, so that will come out, hopefully before Feral Creatures, and that one is much more. It's funny fantasy, and it's also a very difficult book to describe. So I probably won't even try to do that. But it's light and lovely and fun. And so I'm excited now that I'm talking about ST, and there's been loads of really, really lovely response to both books. I feel really sort of encouraged to dive back in and be in that world again. I feel much more in that space, I think. Yeah.
Well, it's nice to need that brain break to do something else, especially if we've been kind of in one, I don't want to say rut. So like, let's say channel, like one groove for a while, and then something interrupts the groove, like, oh, I don't know, the whole planet shutting down. And that does mess things up. And I know, like you said, there were people who I heard were like, this is amazing. I have all this time, and I don't have all these other distractions, and I can focus. And some of that just speaks to different lifestyles and family dynamics. I know for me, I used to have time when my little people were not underfoot to write. And then when they were always home, that made it a lot harder to get in certain mindsets. But also just like what you were saying about sometimes the writing and kind of needing to take a break from one thing and then not being able to even read anything else.
Yeah.
And then getting re-energized by, okay, people are reading it now and they're excited now. So now I can get back to it and see what's happening with these
What's
guys.
going on?
Yeah.
What's on with the crow, right?
On with the crow.
We said
that one was on you. That was not on me.
Sorry, guys.
That's okay. I mean, I don't want anybody to go, there are so many crow puns. I would never. There were a couple, and I think I named all of them just because they cracked me up, because I am a sucker for a really bad pun. And when you've got a crow as a narrator, what are you going to do? You got to let him have a little bit of fun.
Yeah, and he's a logophile Corbett. He really loves wordplay and language.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Even if he doesn't always quite get it exactly right, but he's a crow. You got to give him a little bit of leeway. And he's not a raven. He really made that super clear.
Yeah, he's not a raven.
Well, and I loved the fact that you blended animals that everyone's going to know. Like, people go, yes, I know what a crow is. Thank you. But then also some more obscure animals. And this may just be like a pet peeve of mine, because, well, like I said, I'm a contemporary fiction writer, and I do contemporary romance. And so I don't expect that from my readers. And I had a beta reader on one of my recent books say, you can't compare your character to a tarsier. They're not going to know what a tarsier is. I'm like, well, they can look it up, okay?
Yes!
There's nothing better than the giant eyes. And that's what the comparison was. And she's like, you can't use them. Like, doing it anyway, just try to stop me. But again, when you've got a whole book full of animals, you can use pretty much all of them and describe them however you want, in the most fabulous and fantastical ways, in ways that really make them come alive. Again, one of my favorites, I'll tell you afterwards because I don't want to spoil it, but one of the ones you have almost I don't want to say a sleight of hand of what you think is coming, based on how our protagonist, what he's seeing, and it takes him a while to recognize what he's really seeing, is a creature that does exist and is really fabulous. And I saw some of their cousins at the zoo a couple days ago. So I was very happy to see them. I'm like, yes, these are amazing.
They are.
But I see that we are already past the 35-minute mark, and and time has flown because, well, it's flown, but also just because it's been amazing getting to talk to you, and I could easily talk to you for an hour, but I promise to honor everybody's time and land us all back safely on Earth before we wrap up here. But Kira Jane Buxton, you have been amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Allison. It's been such a pleasure. I'm very depressed that this is over, because what am I going to do? I wanted to talk to you more.
We can chat a little bit more with all the spoilers. And I joke at some point we need to have like a special patrons only edition where you can come in and talk about the spoilers, but mostly we just don't want to ruin the reading experience for people who haven't had a chance to see all this stuff. Like, I know that I probably put it at least one place, but I don't know if anyone remembers, where I compared that treasure that you mentioned to something else I had seen, and I'm going, I know that's my own reference point. Everybody else is just going to think I'm a little bit crazy, so I'll just leave that out. But that's kind of the beauty there, that every book that you come to, you're going to bring in your own references and go, oh, I'm picturing it this way. And the author's going to look at me like you are right now going, Allison, you're insane. So
no, not at all. Not
to the moon with me. It's fine.
To the moon. And congratulations on To the Moon. And
thank you.
Yes, To the Moon again and again and again.
And again. Well, and I'm very excited. This was a fabulous first time out, and I'm already having to deviate from what schedule I'm supposed to be on, which is Tuesdays at 11 a.m. California time, because our next episode, for those who would like to join us, will be on a Sunday, September 12th at 4 p.m., because I'm going to be joined by Shelley Parker Chan, author of She Who Became the Sun. And that author is in Australia. So thanks to things called time zones, if we wanted to have Shelley Parker Chan come join me live at 11 a.m., it would be middle of the night for them. So we are going to do a special Sunday episode. So I hope you all join us for that Sunday, September 12th at 4 p.m. Meanwhile, this has been a copywritten podcast of Authors on the Air, part of Authors on the Air Global Broadcast Network. And thank you to my producer, Roman Siratin, and our executive producer, Pam Stack. See, I'm just now gibbering. Thank you so very much, everyone, for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.